We're developing system upgrades and deploying massive fleets. That's right, it's EVE, War for New Eden from Titan Forge Games. In this strategic space civilization simulator, 4 players each take the role of a faction vying for control of the galaxy. By exploring, expanding, exploiting, and exterminating, they'll each try to gain control of star systems, resources, and victory points. The faction with the most victory points at the end of the game wins! Setup begins with the 4 home system tiles, connecting them with the border tiles to make the frame of the board. Separate the system tiles by tier 1, 2, and 3. Then shuffle each and place the tier 1s face down along the inside of the frame. Repeat this process for tiers 2 and 3, but place them in the locations listed on the setup picture. Return any unused systems back to the box. Create a supply of tokens and cards using the fancy trays that come with the game, along with a discovery bag filled with discovery tokens, an asteroid bag filled with asteroid tokens, and 10 white and 10 black dice. Each player then chooses one faction to play for the game and takes the matching components. One faction panel, which features a list of action options and other important stats, which we'll explain shortly. 5 action cubes, placed in the action pool. 2 currency cubes, placed in the 0 slots of the ISK track, which stands for Interstellar Credits, the main currency of the game. 1 development panel. A player box with control tokens, exhausted fleet tokens, unlock tokens, and development cubes. A development deck, strategy deck, ship card set, and ship models to place next to the faction panel. After taking these components, each player does the following. They gain a number of ISK equal to their faction's income value. They draw 1 event card from the event deck, 3 mission cards, choosing 1 to keep and discarding the other 2 back to the bottom of the deck. Once all players have returned their 2 cards, shuffle the mission deck. They deployed 2 small ships to any of their home systems. They take 2 unlock tokens and set them atop 2 of their 3 asteroid belts in their leftmost home system. Each player then draws 1 mineral card from the deck type matching their uncovered asteroid belt. They then choose any 4 development cards from their development deck and place them face down in their development area. Finally, the player with the oldest EVE Online account takes the first player token. If you somehow have never played EVE, choose a player randomly, I guess. Gameplay occurs in rounds, each divided into 2 phases. You've got your action phase and upkeep phase. During the action phase, each player takes a turn, beginning with the player who holds the first player token and proceeding clockwise. On their turn, a player must take an action or pass. Once all players have passed, play will move to the upkeep phase. Let's take a look at both of those in more detail. On a turn, the active player will perform 1 action by moving a single cube from their action pool to an open action space on their board. After resolving the action, the next player takes a turn. The first 3 action cubes are free to play. If a player wants a 4th or even a 5th action later in the round, they'll cost 5 and 10 ISK respectively. Once a player has used their 3 cubes over 3 turns, they can pay to use additional cubes or pass. Once a player has passed, their turns are now skipped. Once all players have passed, the action phase ends. Let's look at the action options. Move. The active player chooses a system containing their fleet but doesn't yet have an exhausted fleet token on it. Fleets are groupings of ships with at least 1 ship in them. The player may then move as many ships in that system as they wish to up to 2 new systems, leaving some of the fleet in the same space if they wish. This would create multiple fleets. Ships have a speed statistic, and fleets can only move at a speed equal to its slowest ship. The speed value equals the number of systems away the ship can move. When moving into an unexplored system, the tier number indicates the remaining speed points they require in order to move into it. They may move to or through spaces containing allied fleets, but a fleet must stop when 1 of 4 conditions are met. It enters a system claimed by another player, containing their control token. It enters another player's home system. It enters a system with enemy ships, in which case combat begins, but more on combat shortly. Or it enters an unexplored system. After resolving movement, place an exhausted fleet token in the new system or systems. If the fleet ends its movement in a system without enemy ships or control tokens, the player may immediately place their own control token if their fleet's total strength is 3 or more. This can also happen at the end of combat. When moving to a system controlled by another player, that system is considered occupied. The system's controller cannot extract resources there, deploy ships there, and they don't gain minerals or structure bonuses in that system. When ending movement in an unexplored system, reveal the system. If it contains a discovery icon, draw the indicated number of tokens from the discovery bag, gaining the rewards revealed. If there's an asteroid belt slot in the revealed system, draw the indicated number of tokens from the asteroid bag. Choose just one of them and put it in the designated space, then return the other tokens back to the bag. Okay, that's move. Back to the actions. Claim. This allows a player to choose a non-home system containing their fleet and no opposing ships, and place a control token there, removing another player's token if it's present. If an opposing player has a citadel present, the claiming player must have a fleet strength higher than the citadels in the system. Extract. The active player chooses a system with their control token with either a planetary material or moon material icon. They then gain a corresponding resource token for each of them. Trade. This allows the player to buy and sell resources for ISK by performing up to 3 operations from the options on the trade panel. Each operation is performed individually and operations can be repeated. Players can spend or gain ISK for components, materials, and mineral cards, which are worth more when traded in bulk. Manufacture. This action allows a player to spend minerals to produce a number of things by performing up to 3 operations from among the options in the manufacturing panel. The players spend minerals to gain advanced resources, mission cards, event cards, research tokens, and even victory points. Research. When using this action, the player may search their development deck for development cards, placing them into any empty development slots in their area. They can also exchange current developments, discarding their research tokens and returning the other card to the deck. Development cards have a name, cost, prerequisites, effect, and category, which comes in 6 types: structures, conquest, economy, diplomacy, combat, and spaceships. Development cards are always placed face down and can only be viewed by their owner until their research is complete. More on research tokens in a sec. Finally, the build action, which allows the player to deploy new ships and structures to systems. During this action, the player gains a number of build points for the turn equal to the build points value on their faction panel. Build points are just one requirement of deploying ships and structures, including minerals and ISK. Structures require a number of resources and 5 build points. They can be built in an empty structure slot in a system controlled by that player. If the slot has any ISK, minerals, or build points, the cost to deploy is reduced by those numbers. Structures provide bonuses to the player who controls the system and include refineries, which allow extraction of minerals during upkeep, customs office, which increases income, engineering complex, which provides bonus research tokens and the deployment of ships, and citadels, which provide bonuses in combat. Ships can be deployed in either a home system or a system with an engineering complex and cost a number of build points based on their size: 1 for small, 3 for medium, and 5 for large ships, in addition to the other resource requirements. Players can always deploy small ships, but must unlock the requisite developments for bigger vessels. The active player can also use the build action to unlock one of their home system asteroid belts by spending 4 build points and 4 ISK to remove the unlock token. Unlocked belts grant minerals during upkeep. And that's the actions. In addition to their action, on a turn, a player may also resolve a few other effects, either before or after they've taken the action. These include completing a development. If one of their development cards has research tokens equal to its research cost, they reveal it and permanently gain its bonuses. Use a development, turning one of their development cards with a use keyword sideways to gain its once per round bonus, and resolve an event card by revealing it from their hand and discarding it for a one-time bonus. After all players have passed or exhausted all actions, the Upkeep phase begins. Except for the last 3 steps, all steps in the Upkeep should be performed by all players simultaneously. Players first refresh action cubes, returning all action cubes that were spent on actions to the action pool. Refresh fleets, removing all fleet exhausted tokens from all systems. Mine minerals, drawing mineral cards and colors indicated by the colors of asteroid belts in the systems the player controls. Extract materials. For each refinery in a system they control, the player chooses one material that is present in that system and draws the corresponding material token. Gain income. Gaining the number of ISK equal to their income value from their faction panel plus 2 ISK for each customs office in their systems. Research. Gain the number of research tokens equal to the research value indicated in their faction panel plus 1 research token for each engineering complex in the systems they control. Research tokens have to be immediately distributed among the development cards in the development area. Untap developments, turning all development cards with the use keyword to their original orientation. The final 3 steps of the Upkeep phase. First, raid. In turn order, if a player has a fleet in an enemy home system with strength higher than the strength of the system, the player steals a victory point from the raided player. A player can only steal 1 victory point from each enemy in a single Upkeep. If the fleet's strength is lower, then nothing happens. In either case, the fleet must be moved to an adjacent system which has been explored and doesn't belong to another player. Then, domination. All players gain victory points for domination objectives. Objectives will vary from game to game. Finally, the first player token is passed clockwise to the next player. And that's the game structure. Okay, let's finish up with the basics of combat. Ships have cards with various stats, including difficulty, attack, support, reduction, hull points, and speed. They also have abilities, some of which have no prerequisites and others with development requirements. For instance, this Kronos battleship's leader ability requires Tier 1 offensive systems to be researched before it can be used. During battle, one player is the attacker while the other is the defender. First, players each choose 1 strategy card and place it face down near the board. Then, they remove the ships from the system and set them in the combat panels on the opposite sides of the board. Starting with the attacker, the players have to assign all their ships to orbit. There are 3 orbits, small, medium, and large. Each orbit has a designated spot for a leader in the front. A player can assign maximum 1 leader to each orbit. All non-leader ships are known as support ships and are placed behind the leader on the board. Players then reveal strategy cards and resolve their effects. Battle is then played over 3 combat rounds, 1 round for each orbit beginning with small. If an orbit's leader is destroyed before their orbit attacks, for example, an attack from a small orbit that destroys a medium orbit's leader, the player who's lost a leader will not attack from that orbit in that round. There's also an option of retreating ahead of combat rounds, so you can see the combat rules for details. During a round, the active combatant chooses a target ship for their attack, regardless of which orbit they're in. They then establish the attack dice pool by adding the orbit leader's attack stat with the support stat of all the supports and citadels in that orbit. This number will max out at 10 dice. White dice are used for small orbit, medium orbits use a mix of black and white dice, and large orbits use only black dice. Some other game effects might add more dice to this pool. White dice are better at targeting ships, while black dice are better at dealing damage. The player rolls the dice. Aim results are required to even damage a target and must be equal to or more than the targeted ship's difficulty stat. Damage results each provide 1 damage to the ship, and critical damage also provides 1 damage but can also trigger leader abilities. If the damage total exceeds the reduction stat of the target, the excess is dealt as damage tokens onto that ship. If a ship takes damage over time equal to its hull points, it is destroyed and removed from the board. Excess results can be applied to additional ships in the same orbit. After all attacks have been resolved, the round ends. At the end of the combat rounds, starting with the attacker, check if there are any orbits that do not have a leader anymore, but there are supporting ships still in that orbit. If there are, choose one of the support ships to become the new leader in that orbit. Players then gain a combat reward. The attacker gains 1 VP if they are both the winner of combat and they've destroyed at least one enemy ship in that combat. Count the strength of all ships that the attacker has lost and receive reparations, drawing 1 event card for each 3 strength of their destroyed ships, rounding down. The defender does not receive victory points for winning the combat. If the defender has lost at least 1 ship, they will draw an event card. Additionally, count the strength of all ships that the defender has lost and receive reparations as well. 1 event card for each 3 strength of their destroyed ships, rounding down. And that's the basics of EVE, War for New Eden. Since this is a prototype, some small rules might change between now and release. I'm Becca Scott, this is Good Time Society, and you are on the verge of ascending to my heart. Just give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and come on back for more great games and good times. Bye.